Have you ever walked in on a moment so awkward, so raw, that time seemed to split right down the middle, before and after? That was me, standing in the hallway, towel in hand, thinking I was just doing a kind motherly thing by checking in. I didn't expect to hear the water still running, or to catch my 17-year-old stepson frozen mid-motion, red-faced, caught between shock and shame. But what truly startled me wasn't what I saw. It was the look in his eyes. There was something else there, something deeper. And when I chose to step inside instead of walking away, I opened a door I can never close again. What followed wasn't just a mistake. It was the unraveling of a secret I didn't even know I was keeping. Elena, 42, second-time wife, mother of one, stepmother of one. I used to think I had this perfectly compartmentalized life, a teaching job I loved, a quiet suburban home, and a marriage that, while not passionate, was solid, steady, safe. At least that's what I told myself. My husband Greg was a good man, dry, dependable, emotionally aloof in that way some men wear like armor. But he made me feel chosen after a messy divorce left me guarded and brittle. And then there was Caleb, Greg's son from his first marriage. 17, tall for his age, with this mop of dark curls and eyes like storm clouds right before they break. He'd been living with us for the past 2 years since his mother took a job overseas. We were still learning how to dance around each other's boundaries. I tried to be maternal but not overbearing, supportive but not smothering. Most days, we existed in parallel lanes, brief nods in the kitchen, short chats over dinner, him politely tolerating my presence while I tried not to overanalyze his silences. That Saturday had started like any other. Rain tapping on the window panes, the smell of wet earth seeping in through the open kitchen door, coffee brewing low and slow. Greg had left early for a work conference, his kiss on my cheek perfunctory, already distracted by whatever spreadsheet awaited him. Caleb had been unusually quiet at breakfast, mumbling something about feeling off and disappearing upstairs. I remember the way the light slanted through the hallway window as I carried a fresh towel up the stairs. It was this soft, golden filter that made the house feel warmer than it really was. I paused outside the bathroom door, noticed the light was still on, the water still running. I knocked once. No answer. "Caleb, I'm just leaving a towel, okay?" What happened next was like stepping into a pocket of time that didn't belong to me. The door creaked open just enough. Enough for me to see him hunched forward in the tub, his back tense, his arm moving, not in a frantic way but deliberate, like he was trying to ease pain more than seek pleasure. His face when he noticed me was something I'll never forget, like a child caught stealing, ashamed but defiant. I should have turned away. God knows I wanted to. But something made me stay there a second longer. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was something darker I wasn't ready to admit. All I know is that single second changed everything. I closed the door. Not all the way. Just enough to give him back his privacy, though the image had already burned into my mind like a negative left too long in the sun. I stood there, hand still on the knob, heart hammering like I'd run up the stairs, not walked. My skin prickled. Guilt, shock. I didn't know, but I couldn't move. "Elena?" His voice came through the door, soft, unsure. "Sorry," I said quickly. Breath catching. "I didn't mean to. You left the water on. I thought you were out." There was a pause, heavy and awkward, the kind where all the things you shouldn't say buzz just beneath your tongue. "It's okay," he replied. You can come in if you want." I should have said no. God, I should have said no. But I pushed the door open again, slowly, and stepped inside like I was walking into someone else's life. He'd pulled a towel over his lap, and his shoulders were rigid. His cheeks were still flushed, though not just from embarrassment now. Something else swam beneath the surface. Vulnerability, confusion, maybe a touch of defiance. I reached for the faucet and turned the water off. The silence that followed was thick. "Are you hurt?" I asked. It sounded absurd, but something in his expression earlier had concerned me. It didn't feel like some teenage indulgence. It felt like he was trying to soothe himself, like something wasn't right. He hesitated. "I don't know. Maybe." "You've seemed off lately. Quiet." I kept my voice low, like I was afraid of scaring him off. He looked down, fiddling with the edge of the towel. "It's hard, living here, with you." I swallowed. "With me? You're not my mom, but you act like one sometimes. And other times..." He trailed off. I sat on the edge of the sink, heart thudding in my ears. "Other times what?" "You. Look at me like you see me. Not as a kid, like a man." I didn't answer right away. There was a tightness in my chest I hadn't felt in years. That terrifying, exhilarating recognition. He wasn't wrong. Somewhere along the way, I had started seeing him differently. Not in every moment, not in any conscious way, but in the lingering glances, the way I noticed how his voice had deepened, how his presence filled a room. "That's dangerous talk, Caleb," I whispered. He looked up at me, eyes dark and unreadable. "I know. But it's the truth, isn't it?" I stood, suddenly aware of how close we were. The heat in the room, the steam still clinging to the mirror, the scent of his shampoo in the air. It was too much. "I think you're confused. And maybe I am too," I said, trying to steady myself. "But we can't do this." He didn't argue. He didn't need to. The air between us said more than either of us could. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. Greg had called to say he'd be staying an extra night. I'd mumbled something about being tired, tried to pretend everything was normal. But the image of Caleb in that tub haunted me. The way he looked at me like I was the only person in. The world who could understand him. Or maybe the only one who tried. I thought about all the little moments leading up to now. The way he lingered in the kitchen when I cooked. The time his hand brushed mine, and neither of us pulled away fast. Enough. The notes he left me. Innocent on the surface, but filled with subtext I'd ignored. Was it my loneliness that made me read into those things? Or had we both been tiptoeing toward this moment without realizing it? I stared at the ceiling. My thoughts a tangled mess. Somewhere inside me, a war was raging. The woman I'd always been, and the one I was becoming. The mother, the wife, and something else. Something far more dangerous. The next morning, I found him in the backyard, sitting on the patio steps with a blanket wrapped around his shoulders. The sun was still low, casting everything in that cool blue light that made the world feel like it hadn't decided what kind of day it was going to be yet. I stood in the kitchen watching him through the window, coffee cooling in my hand, my body tense with everything unsaid between us. I couldn't shake the way he'd looked at me in that bathroom. Not just with desire, but with longing. Like he'd been carrying something for so long, and in that one moment, he'd let it crack the surface. I didn't want to go out there, but I did. He didn't turn when I slid open the glass door. I sat beside him, the chill in the air making the silence even sharper. "I didn't sleep," I said quietly. "Me neither." We sat for a long moment. Leaves rustled. A bird called from the neighbor's yard. And then he said it. "I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable," he murmured. "But I can't pretend anymore, Elena. I feel things. About you. Things I probably shouldn't." My breath hitched. The truth had finally been spoken aloud, and it hung there between us, fragile and heavy. "I know," I whispered. He turned to me, his voice raw. "I've felt it for a while, the way you look at me sometimes. It's not just in my head." I couldn't lie. Not now. It's not. His eyes searched mine, not for seduction, but for honesty, for answers. "Why didn't you stop me?" "Yesterday?" I swallowed hard. "Because I didn't want to." Saying it out loud felt like tearing off a mask I didn't know I'd been wearing. My voice cracked. "I don't know what's wrong with me. I've felt so alone. Greg he's here, but he's not. He hasn't been for a long time. And you, Caleb, you see me. I didn't ask for it, but when someone sees you like that, it's hard to pretend you don't see them too." He nodded slowly, but there was pain in his expression. "So it's just because you're lonely?" I turned to him, heart aching. "No, that's just where it started. But it's more now, and that's what scares me." Tears welled in his eyes, unshed, but glistening. "What do we do now?" I didn't have an answer. I only knew that everything had shifted. There was no unseeing what had been seen, no undoing the current we'd stepped into. "You go back inside," I said softly, placing a hand on his, "and we figure this out slowly, carefully, without hurting each other, or Greg, especially him." He nodded, but his hand didn't move. From mine, for a moment, I let it stay there, skin against skin, both of us trembling from the weight of the truth. I had always believed infidelity was a matter of action. A kiss, a lie, a night in the wrong bed. But I was wrong. Sometimes it begins in the quietest moments, in a look, in a breath, in a question you let hang in the air just a second too long. It's been weeks now since that morning on the patio. Greg came back from his trip like nothing had changed, kissing my cheek, asking about the garden, complaining about traffic. I answered his questions, made dinner, folded laundry. I played. The part I'd always played. But something had changed. Caleb and I, we didn't cross any more lines, not physically, but we danced near them in silence, in glances. We learned to speak without words, to navigate a new, unbearable kind of intimacy, one built on restraint rather than indulgence. That might have been the cruelest part of all. He started staying out more, spending nights at friends' houses, filling his time with anything but home. I didn't ask questions. I think we both knew the answer was distance. And maybe that's what love sometimes is, the choice to step back when stepping forward would ruin everything. But I catch him watching me sometimes, and I look back. Not because I'm reckless or heartless, but because I miss the feeling of being seen. I've begun therapy, quietly, without telling Greg. I told myself it was about coping with stress, with aging, with the slow erosion of passion in my marriage. But really, it's about learning where the fault line started, long before Caleb. Learning how to forgive myself for being human. I don't know what the future holds. Maybe Caleb will leave for college and we'll never speak of this again. Maybe he'll always carry that morning with him, the way I will. A scar that doesn't fade, but teaches you something about where your boundaries begin and end. People love to draw clean lines around morality. Right and wrong, love and betrayal. But life isn't made of clean lines. It's messy, gray, frightening in its ambiguity. If I learned anything, it's this. Sometimes the greatest betrayals aren't the ones that break vows, but the ones that expose the parts of yourself you were never ready to see. And now that I've seen her, this version of me, I can't look away.